Got some 3 pages of minutes to approve, and there's a little bit of amending I'd like to do in the last part, but did everyone get the minutes, and can I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Aaron. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Otis. All right, is there any discussion besides what I've led you to believe is going to be discussion by me? Other questions? Okay, so it came to my attention that in the last part, when we were talking about section 7.7, that the word referendum came up a couple of times in there, and petition was in there without distinguishing that it was a 7.7 initiative petition. So I have about 14 changes to add the word initiative. So if you could all follow me so we don't have to do this. I was going to save it, but it's like, let's just do it. Okay. So start from the first bullet, go down 3 lines, and you'll see it says section 7 allows the public to present a proposed. I would say I would like to substitute the word initiate. And then it says a proposed, I'd like to substitute the word measure, since it could come before either the city council or the school committee. So I'm going to keep saying this, and then if you have a question or you object, say something. Otherwise, just let me keep going. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it says supplemental petition. I'd like to add the word in between initiative petition. There's a sentence that starts, a Greenfield citizen has suggested, and then the next sentence is question was raised if the supplemental, and I'd like to add the word initiative and then petition was a necessary process. In the next bullet, in the second line, it says in the charter as is using a supplemental, and again add the word initiative petition, add the word initiative before petition. There was discussion on supplemental or not supplemental. Again, the word initiative be put in between those words supplemental and petition. On the end of the 4th sentence, it says supplemental, have the word initiative be added. And so it's supplemental initiative petition. Opportunity, then the sentence goes on. Let's see. It says number of signatures, and then the line after it says number of required signatures on a, should be on an initiative petition. Keep going after Councilor Gilmore's having a small number of signatures just to have the initiative petition. I think I'm hearing my echo. Committee member Woods noted that he would suggest 5% of the voters in order to submit an initiative petition. And then with an additional 2.5% for the referendum to be placed, that word should be initiative or the initiative petition. It's not a referendum because we weren't talking about that part of the charter. Then it says committee member Donnelly believed that the supplemental, again, initiative petition. And then at the end, the second to last sentence, the committee agreed that the same percentage of signatures should be used for both the supplemental initiative and referendum petitions. Does anybody have any trouble with all those amendments? Okay. So I'm going to take a roll call. So I want the minutes approved as amended, unless there are any, it sounds like there's nothing else approved as amended. So I'll do a roll call. Councilor Forgy, approve as amended?
Yes.
Councilor Wheeler, approve as amended?
Yes.
Aaron, approve as amended?
Yes.
John, approve as amended?
Yes.
Alan, approve as amended?
Yes.
And David, approve as amended? Yes. Okay. Now the agenda, we were going to start with the balancing test, but Kim is on here because last week, I think it was last week, we got a legal opinion, and the legal opinion answered our questions about whether we can have, both elected and appointed. So that's good that you can have both. And so I think with Kim being here, maybe we should just talk about the assessors again, move that to the first part. And then, is that okay with everybody?
Mhm.
Courteous?
Yep.
We are a courteous group. Okay, so my reading of the legal opinion is beyond the fact that you can both vote and, both elect and appoint. It also made it clear about the home rule, how much flexibility we have locally. And then it went on to a little bit talk about sort of what the lawyer might have perceived as a standardized way of setting up an assessor's office. And she even made some suggested changes, and I'm sure you got those as well. I don't want to, I certainly don't want to step on the mayor's toes on this one, and that's the reason why I'm bringing it up. But or Kim's. But the idea was that I thought we had finished this section, and I just wondered if anything that the legal opinion provided would have caused anybody to make any other material suggestions about changes. Clearly, there is an opportunity, I guess, to do a little bit of changing around. I must say that the recommendations by the lawyer should be done at the charter level, not at the ordinance level. So I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to focus everybody. And whoever wants to start, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I'm not sure I read things as correctly as I thought, but my question is, when we talk about having a hybrid model of an elected assessor and an appointed assessor, one thing that I think I'm saying I think because I did read it over, but I'm trying to recall. There was a piece in there that I questioned about the fact that the chair, the chief assessor, for instance, if the chief assessor is appointed, then the chief assessor's appointment cannot run indefinitely. It can run for 3 years, and then that means that with a different mayor can appoint a different chief assessor. And that seems to me to be problematic because you do want to keep an assessing professional on hand all the time and not have it change to whatever the next mayor thinks is going to be appropriate. Did I misread that, or is there a further clarification on that piece? Jump in.
I'll jump in. So in its narrowness, the charter can have somebody who's considered one of the assessors, top tier. Those top tier people have to have definite terms of office. Okay, so just put that's a rule. Okay, now it doesn't work for us because based on what Kim told us, Kim has a lot of the responsibilities that might come with somebody who the lawyer was focused on is like the day-to-day person who's like what we would call an assistant assessor. I don't want to denigrate you, Kim, by using those words, but just the way that this was played out. And so that's a person that, might be a person who continues on. But again, the charter has to be changed so that the assessor has to have that's a have to.
So, can I step in? So currently, I think what she might have been referring to is my title for payroll right now is assistant assessor, because the previous mayor wanted me to get my designation in order to actually have the chief assessor position. So it's possible that maybe that was part of where she was touching on. But I do, like you had said, the chief assessor, the assistant assessor, regardless, is someone that's appointed by the mayor, but is also hired by the city. So I don't, contract wise, I'm not sure if that comes into play. Mayor, maybe you can sort of.
Well, I don't remember where I brought this up. It might have been in a previous discussion here, or it might have been in an email to the lawyer. I can't remember which. But what I have noticed in municipal speak, the word appoint is used as a synonym for hire. And it would only be in this a case like this where it could be very confusing, because in the city of Greenfield, as opposed to, I don't know, a town where a board of selectmen appoints, appointments are to boards and commissions and so forth and so on. Department heads and so forth, maybe it was a discussion with Chair Singer, I don't remember. But department heads and so forth are literally hired, but it seems to be in municipal language, the word appoint is used in place of hired. So I think that's where we get a little crosswise on this, and I don't know what the resolution is for you folks at the moment, other than to understand that when I think the charter says the chief assessor is appointed, or the assistant assessor, and I'll address that in a minute too, is appointed by the mayor. It really means they have a position in which they receive a salary and they are appointed by or hired by the city of Greenfield. As far as chief assessor, assistant assessor, I also had that question for the lawyer, but I literally have not had time to have a lengthy discussion with her. For all, I mean, I wasn't aware until Kim mentioned this, or if I was, I had forgotten it. But I know that Kim is completing her coursework, or attempting to. It's COVID, you know, it is a pandemic, and still it is. So she's been attempting to complete her coursework so that she can actually get her designation legally, I guess, or by license or whatever certification, a chief assessor. But she functions in the role of an assistant assessor for that day-to-day person. As soon as she becomes a chief assessor, she will also do that, because quite simply, the city of Greenfield, or at least right now, can't afford to literally put another person on the payroll in that department, in that position. So that is kind of all I have to say on this. I think, in other words, at some point in time, if we have something like an assistant assessor and the chief assessor, who I would certainly hope would be Kim, would be willing to, and you know, is willing to hand off, because that person has all the education they need, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the duties of the chief assessor, as noted in the legal opinion, then I think, you know, that would certainly be fine. But we determined this year that it was probably better if we did not add a staff person. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Yeah.
Anybody else? John, sorry.
So the only thing that I think this does is set up a little bit of a conflict with section 3-3, appointments by the mayor, which says that except as may otherwise be required by the civil service law and in this charter, appointments made by the mayor shall be for indefinite terms. So I don't know if civil service law covers the assessor, but I just wanted to check to make sure that we weren't saying two different things in two different portions of the charter.
The only thing it covers right now is the fire department.
Okay, so then the legal opinion, if we hold that to be true, so there's now a conflict between holding that and saying you cannot have an indefinite term according to the legal opinion, and the fact that in section 3.3 under A, it's about 2/3 of the way down, we say that all appointments by the mayor are for indefinite terms.
Yeah, but it says unless otherwise stated somewhere else, right?
It says, except as may otherwise be required by the civil service law and in this charter. But why would we apply it differently to the assessor? It also doesn't say chief assessor. The opinion says any board member. So the department heads aren't board members. So maybe we want to make that distinction. And we may want to say the chief assessor isn't a board member, that the mayor can serve on a board. But right now, it seems like we're saying two different things. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chris.
You're welcome.
I'm trying to find where sections. I'm moving around in my little thing.
33, I think you said.
It's
I'm sorry.
section 3.3 appointments by the mayor under the executive portion, obviously.
Yes. But did you look though that we're trying to amend that provision as well? So if you look at the draft, you'll see
But that's about multi-member bodies. So are we saying the assessor, the chief assessor, is not like a department head? If we are, that's okay. But I didn't get the sense that's what we were saying.
All right, I'm
I
sorry.
could be wrong.
I didn't even interrupt. I think I have a clarification. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm just looking for solid language, which, however it's structured, that determines that the principal assessor, whatever the title is a professional employee that serves the city. And I understand a mayor can hire and fire at whim, but I want to see the the continuity that would stay with an employee doing a great job, by the way, that could not be threatened through charter language so that the mayor could exercise that arbitrarily. That's what I'm saying is, if we have someone, if they are working hard, if they're doing what they need to do for the city, I would not like that person to be subject to an arbitrary decision based on politics.
Otis.
Thanks. Okay, there's a lot to dig in here, but I'm concerned that the legal opinion actually refers to elected officials and not appointed ones, because my reading of Mass General Law, Chapter 43B, Section 20, Clause D, appears to me to refer only to elected officials. So I don't actually see the legal impediment that was pointed out. Now, I may be missing something because there's a lot here.
Are you saying that under the state law, under Section 20D, they're only talking about elected, not appointed and elected? Or does it say elected, or does it just say assessors?
The way that I read it, well, I'll just read it. It's one sentence. It says, okay, I have to read the part before it. Well, for the term of office to be served by any local elected officer, provided, however, that no term of office of a local elected officer shall be for more than 5 years, and the members of multiple member bodies shall serve for terms which, as nearly as possible, expire in different years. So that was the section that was referred to in the legal opinion, unless I'm missing something.
Aren't there commas in that sentence? So it kind of separates the concepts. First it says elected officials this, then a comma, then it says something else, comma.
Yeah,
it's not a sentence that connects everything to the idea of elected. It just keeps going on and on and on about the rules, right?
Right. Yes, I see what you're saying. So the section that says members of multiple member bodies shall serve for terms which, as nearly as possible, expire in different years. So That's probably correct. I'm not a lawyer.
No,
So
no,
in that case,
it's-
I really think that I would resolve this simply by defining the term to, 3 years. I mean, we have constables in the city. They're paid and they have a term limit. And, any new mayor can or cannot extend the term of their employment or appointment, whatever language you want to use. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Mayor?
I just wanted to say that most contracts, I think probably all contracts that we execute in the city for department heads in particular are for 3 years. So it isn't an indefinite term. So I do think that you can adjust the charter language there with regard to the chief assessor for sure. If we're looking at that person as someone who is appointed / hired by the mayor, in other words. Just know that, and I agree with everyone, an indefinite term is not appropriate to that language in particular.
Kim?
So going off of what the mayor said, the chief assessor as well as the treasurer collector is a tad different than your typical department head because we are also members of the union. So your typical department head might be someone who does have a 3-year contract. However, when we were hired as union members, and so it might throw a wrench in things if the mayor decides to appoint someone else in your position. And that goes for both of us. So I just, I didn't want to not mention that and have that be an issue later on.
Okay. So this is my sense of it. By using the words Board of Assessors and putting the appointed part in that sentence, it seems like unless Otis is correct, that each of the assessors has to serve staggered terms of 4 years. So that by naming the chief as one of the Board of Assessors, we're stuck with that as a requirement. However, she goes on to say what I think what she does maybe realize that she, meaning the lawyer, I should call her by name, Jess.
No, Jess is a he.
Okay.
So,
But he referred to the fact that a lot of the work that was done by another lawyer in the firm.
So it seems like Jess is also suggesting that because of that problem, he wonders about reorganizing the assessor's office. So I would say that maybe that's not something at this late stage of what we're doing to get deeply into, and it doesn't seem like it's the right time to do that. But so I would say, number one, Mayor, please go back and confirm that that's a have to. That's what it seems to say. Whether the indefinite term is a have to. If it's a have to,
Okay.
and I would suggest that, maybe you can negotiate with the union to deal with it, but at least the mayor gets to appoint that person at the same time that the mayor gets elected. So that person serves 4 years with the mayor. So it's the mayor's clear appointment and not in the middle of the mayor's term, which could be a staggered, anyway. So that's so that I have to leave it to others to work out that geometry. But the other thing that I've heard from concerned people is this idea of how the chief assessor has access to the internal workings of the office and the elected do not. And that's not codified. And Jess says that that the chief can be a day-to-day person and a regular assessor. So that's a good thing. So the chief assessor, Kim, does the day-to-day work. The chief assessor, Kim, breaks the ties with the 2 elected officials. But on the other side of it, there was the protocol is, according to what Kim said, that the elected assessors can't, get into the office files at least without permission. So they can't get into it just by being an assessor. So there might be language that you want to put in either here or in the ordinance that distinguishes the fact that the chief assessor is a day-to-day person, but the elected assessors are not. And it sounds to me like just what I'm hearing around the concerns. If again, the indefinite term is a technical issue that I can't comment on, but we have to do it if the law requires it. But more important, and then line up the chief assessor with the mayor on election. But the second part is distinguishing between the assessors that are elected and appointed. So again, we could, I don't know exactly how to do that. Maybe again, Roxy, I'm not asking you to spend too much money on this, but it might be helpful for those two questions to be answered by Jess, and then we could come back and decide how we want to finish this off. And I know that Councilor Forgy would like to see this modified at some point in the future, that the mayor gets to appoint. Seems like the rest of the members feel comfortable that we could have 2 elected and 1 appointed, especially the appointment now being critical if that person's going to be the day-to-day person. So can we leave it at that? Kim, does that sound like, how do you and the mayor feel about this, identifying the distinction that the chief assessor can do day-to-day operations while the elected cannot? Is there a need to make that distinction, even though that's the practice?
I think that it wouldn't be a horrible thing to do, just to be extra clear. My thought is probably it was not made clear when we first made our charter, because maybe we didn't know if they were going to be more active members of the board, because like I had mentioned last time, in smaller towns and maybe other cities, but definitely smaller towns, the board members are more active than ours, and they do actually go out and do inspections. So it's possible that the reason it wasn't actually clarified was because they weren't sure, changing to a city, how we were going to work things. But I don't think it's a terrible idea to make the distinction that, the board members are not doing day-to-day stuff, because it also might help if someone reads the charter that's interested in the board of assessors, or interested in the assessor's office, they might go, oh, well, it's not a full-time job, so maybe I could try to run for a board, so it's I certainly don't think it's a bad thing. And I think the appointment of the chief assessor being a member of the board totally makes sense, that it would be an appointment to be on the board by the mayor. Because if for some reason a mayor came in thinking, this person doesn't have a clue what they're doing, I don't want them on the board, that way at least they feel that they have, not that that would happen, but I'm just saying, but they feel like they have the ability to make a change, where the way it's set up now, you're sort of stuck with me, so to speak. Me, because I'm here, but you're stuck with sort of whoever is the assessor at that moment. So, and maybe there's a year where, or a 4-year term where it's decided that the mayor wants to appoint someone else. And then once they do it, they find out either they don't like how it's going, or whatever the case is, and then the chief assessor gets appointed to be a part of the board again. So, I don't think it's a terrible thing by any means.
Right, but if the law says that the person has, if the law says Kim has to be reappointed every 4 years, and there's now a contract that doesn't allow for that, meaning that your job is really for a finite term, not an indefinite term. That's a contractual issue between your union and the mayor's office.
Yep. So that would certainly cause an issue.
Well, but the question then is, what is it an illegal contract if it forces on the mayor something that's not allowed by law?
Right.
Yeah.
Or does your definition then change, even though you're called chief assessor, the law might have to push you to be something else, because you can't be on the board of assessors with a contract that's indefinite. So you're running up against labor contract you have, and how to negotiate that. the law that says you can't function as a chief assessor unless your term is finite.
And I think that with some of the clarification that the mayor can get us, that might also be clarified, because I'm under the impression that just because I'm the chief assessor doesn't mean that I have to be part of the board. So I think that maybe with some clarification that we might already be getting, that may clear that up as well.
All right, so for our role, but for our role, we can only make recommendations. The first recommendation is we got a legal opinion that says it has to be 4 years. The 4 years probably should line up with the mayor's term. And if people want to, either by charter or by ordinance, further define the distinction between the elected and appointed assessor as far as the scope of their work. I think that's enough for us to do. We wouldn't make the changes because the mayor and the council would have to work through that. You and the mayor would have to work through that. And we could point out that those problems exist. But it sounds like, but it doesn't mean necessarily that we can't make the second change, which is to further define what the at-large, what the other assessors do versus the chief assessor. So I guess that would be for us to finally work that out. Am I making sense, Mayor?
Yeah, you're making sense. I won't tell you to stop.
Unless I don't make sense, then tell me to stop.
I agree with Kim that it's not the worst thing in the world to say that the chief assessor does the day-to-day overseeing of the work of both assessors and the department as a whole, or however you want to put it. I will say that, and I probably applied to Attorney Belcher-Timmy, Jesse, that I felt like his the lawyer, the additional lawyer who he referred to as having more experience or having dealt with this a lot, probably because I know the practice that they're in, probably dealt mostly with towns, not cities. So the concept of an entire board of assessor being elected or appointed is the way it is. They don't have a town may not hire a chief assessor in the same way that a city would. And I haven't had the conversation with this particular lawyer whose name I can't remember either, but it was in the email. I just commented to Attorney Belcher-Timmy that it seemed to me that her opinions really reflected more on what a town might want to do in their charter, if towns even have charters. I'm not sure they do, than cities. And I have not, as I said earlier, had an opportunity to call her and sort of parse that out with her. But because I'm going to call and find out this other information, I will probably have an opportunity to talk to her.
Okay, that would be great.
And that was just a piece of aside. I just want, mostly in answer to your question, yes, I think you could define that the chief assessor is the day-to-day person.
All right, anybody else? Is everybody okay with that? Let the mayor find out the first part that's a little more technical, and then the second part we'll add something that distinguishes the chief from the elected. Does that feel comfortable? If you don't feel comfortable, say something. All right. Now, there was a second piece that Jesse put about Department of Municipal Finance, which I just made that change because it seems like that wasn't picked up.
Mm-hmm.
But I would ask for Chris and the mayor to let me know that that makes more sense to put in the sentence that she recommends and take out the sentence that she says should be deleted.
It makes sense to me.
I think it makes sense to me too.
All right. Anybody else? I'll go. I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I just said I think because I honestly don't remember what it was she recommended.
It's
She
to,
said that the provision in the scope,
was wrong, was illegal.
well, it starts off saying a Department of Municipal Finance.
Yeah.
Then it goes into the director, but then the next sentence, B, is about the director. So the second
Yeah.
sentence should be somewhere else so she's
Yeah.
saying that seems to be dealt with again in B. So let's add this new sentence that defines what the Department of Municipal Finance is.
Yeah.
And it seemed
Okay,
to
yes,
gather all these other departments into one umbrella. So that's what I think.
Yeah. I found that to be rational. Let me put it that way. I mean, the Director of Municipal Finance does oversee collector, treasurer, assessors, and the Department of Finance in Greenfield. So that would be all the other people that are in there, the accountants, the accounts, etc.
that it makes sense.
Okay, good. So we took care of that. All right, now, drum roll. So we're going to talk about sections 7.7 and 7.8, the balancing test. Whatever that means. Whatever that means, right? Leading into some discussion, throwing out a few crumbs of thought. So I went to the trouble, because I felt like it, of putting in.
Could I just ask if you could let Kim go back to her real life at home?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim.
I
Yes,
think
go
that'd
back.
be a good idea.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and anytime again that you need me to come, I'm happy to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. You're very good. It was helpful to have you do this again. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would think she'd be excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
Really, this is like talking quantum physics or something.
Right.
Okay, so these suggestions are going to go to the council level, and there's a motion that surrounds these provisions, especially 7.8, and I would rather that we have a discussion just based on, I don't know, philosophy, civics, whatever realm you want to enter, art, and think about the fact that our charter created a representative form of government on the one hand. However, we'd also like to see the people continue to hold on to the ability to have strong input in the actions of their representatives, So you're going to probably hear, example, when you go to public hearing on this at the council level, you're going to hear people talk about the library and how it only took 400 votes, and maybe other examples that are out there from the past where petitions went in after a long haul within the legislative body. And so anyway, I'll stop. Anybody, I'd love to hear whatever each of you think. I like to go down the roll and see what each of you think. So who wants to start? Alan.
I just feel that your bold-faced paragraph there frames the question and does not provide, opinion, because opinion is what the council is necessary for the council to make that decision. But I feel like your words frame the question well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, who's next? I want to hear from everybody. This one, I want to hear from everybody, please. I'll wait.
Okay. You, Chris. You first.
Oh, okay, thanks. the question is a general one. Are we still using, I'm not sure, I'm not sure. So the question is, are we still using the biennial election um, percentage as part of this language?
No.
Okay, thank you, because I'm looking at one piece and then I'm looking at the most recent pieces you sent. And I just want to make sure that biennial election percentage is, in my opinion, it's not relevant and it should not be contained in the language.
That's the suggestion.
The biennial election is mentioned in there, but what it's mentioned as is the number of registered voters as of the biennial election, not the number of people who voted at the biennial election.
Thank you, Alan, for the clarification. Thank you.
Mhm.
So do you have any comment about that, about the test or any test?
Is this a trick question?
Trick question.
Yeah, no trick question. Okay.
Nope.
No, I don't have a comment at this time.
Okay.
All right, I'll dive into this.
Okay, good.
And the only way I'm going to is I'm just for my own thought process, I'm going to have to bring up all of the examples that we already have. But for my sake in thinking about it, it's helpful for me to think of an example of a decision that I, as a citizen, might want to overturn. So I lived in Greenfield when there was a talk of a biomass plant. I was younger. I don't remember how far it got. I know Springfield is currently considering a biomass plant. It's not something that I support. So in that case of Greenfield, I probably would have signed an initiative referendum petition. What are the numbers that feel, because even if I'm on that side, I want it to mean something, as we've been saying. 400 doesn't, it just feels like way too low a number. It just feels way too easy. I think we can say that judging the results of the library referendum, I think that the library I think they would not have had a problem collecting, say, 800 votes. I think that would have been, and I think there would have been less angst around the entire thing if there'd been a little bit higher of a threshold, because you really have to respect that number. You have to respect that many people signing something like that. So, this really is, I'm not making an argument. I'm talking this out loud. This is my thought process for where I'm at. I think 1,200 people is a lot. That's a lot. I don't think that's a problem. You should need a lot of people to overturn a decision made by a representative body, and it should be an important decision. And so, even though my gut is kind of more in the 800 range, that's sort of my understanding is that's like a 7.5%. It's kind of not a clean number, but those are my thoughts. I'm just gonna leave them there.
Thank you. John?
So I would say that when we talk about this, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. I agree about the balancing act, but it seems like when we get into this discussion, we forget that people did have a voice in this right in the beginning when they elected their representatives. And that it's not like the choice was between representative democracy or nothing. There are towns that have town meeting and have pure, straight up, everybody votes on everything. You choose representative democracy because you believe as a group that is the best form of local self-control. When you choose that, whether people do or not, you should understand that means you are entrusting decisions to those representatives that you have elected. So I believe that your bold paragraph is correct, but I tend to think as along the general lines of Otis, in that my concern is that if the number's too low, then it can just become a flail for people to use against things they don't like. And people who are unhappy with the course of who has been elected can seize upon it. I'm not saying anyone has, but that they could seize upon it as a way to just constantly block representative government. So I don't personally feel like 1,200 people is too large a number. I'm not sure I'd go a lot higher than that. I think that number actually represents the percentage that, if you benchmark against communities in the area, is a number that's in line. You can certainly find communities that are more or less, but I don't think requiring a more significant amount of people at 400 people in a city of 12,000 voters is onerous or punitive for people who understand that they're living within a representative government. And if they don't like it, if they don't like the decisions that are made by their representative, their primary method of registering their disagreement is to elect somebody else.
Right.
And so I do think there should be a balancing act. I do not feel that 1,200 people is excessive. I think 400 is too tilted in favor of making it too easy, and that balancing point should be higher. That's just how I view it.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Who's left?
I tend to think that people want it to be lower when they disagree with something that the committee, that the town council did or the city council did, and they want it to be higher when they agree. And I could imagine that people, people who have engaged in this process might feel that way. They might say that they're just very dedicated to, the people having a voice. And maybe that's true, but I think that harkens back to people who wish we still had town meeting. And that is not our form of government in this city. I think there is a community of people who remember that time and wish for that time again. And we are not going back, seems to me. So I tend to agree that higher, that 400 is low, and there's a certain number of people who you can just get to sign anything at Foster's. So, I mean, I've been one of those people where I've said, yeah, put it on the ballot, great. And I think that some people don't understand what maybe they're signing. I mean, I've been one of those people who somebody has said to me, we want to get this on the ballot. And to me, I say, that's legit, and not even realize that it's been voted on and discussed and deliberated by a city council. And I also think many of the cities around us, at least a lot of the ones that I looked at. Now, I haven't done a look at all of these home rule charters, but Northampton's higher, West Springfield's higher. They're all significantly higher.
Yes.
And so and I don't want it to be too onerous. I don't want it to be impossible. But I do think we elect people for a reason. and we do have to trust those people to a certain extent, and then yeah, vote them out if we don't like what they're doing. So I tend to be, you know, on the higher end.
Do you have any kind of a sense? So let's say the range was between 5% and 10%. Erin, do you have a sense of where your range might be?
10.
I agree with 10 as well.
David, just to clarify, we've had comments, and I think most of the comments that people have made are talking about section 7.8, the referendum, which is overturning.
Right.
And section 7.7 is slightly different, but as Erin pointed out last time, if you get to a supplemental petition, you're essentially overturning, or you're going beyond the council's clear vote. So I just wanted to see if people are clearly saying that their comments relate to both 7.7 and 7.8, because people mostly referred to referendums and overturning.
Yes, well, I specifically thank you. That's a good point. I was going to go to 7.7 after 7.8 because I figured 7.8 was, just had its own. They're not the same in terms of how you look at it. But Erin did make a point about the supplemental rising to the same level as the referendum. But it begs the question of, should the initiative petition be relatively low to give people a chance to go before the council?
Yes.
And, so maybe it would be 5%, 10%, so 5% and, and so that's one thing. There are schedules, but I when I look at the days, I know that people get irritated by how long it takes, but I also, the clerk's office and the council have to set up their agenda, or the school committee. It doesn't just take 20 days for that to happen. So I'll let the city council sort of figure that part out. But that's a good point, Alan. So just, does anybody want, is 5% and 10% an okay? No. Chris says no. Okay.
I say no.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't know. Today's not my day. I thought you were all discussing the initiative petition, and I think 10% is very reasonable for the initiative petition. I actually would like to see that number higher on a referendum. And again, as Otis mentioned before, when you talk about the library and everything else, I think the barometer should be higher when the council has gone through every process it possibly can, every public hearing it possibly can go through. It takes a vote. And as Erin pointed out, it's not sitting well with some people. I just think that having a higher percentage on that referendum makes better sense to me than having the same or less.
All right, so I'm going to draw you out a little bit because you were willing to delve so much last time that you were talking.
Okay.
So let's just stay on the initiative. 10%, when you say 10% for the initiative, you mean for the supplemental. So what would be the percentage for the original petition going to the council?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would do that. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. The supplemental going to the council. You mean the initiative, the beginning?
The root of the initiative is a group of people get together and under 7.7 and say to the council, please pass this measure.
So you are looking for a percentage rather than a number.
Yeah, well, then, yeah, percentage. We know the percentage. We can equate the percentage with a number now because we know there's 12,000 registered voters and we're using registered voters. So if we say 5%, that'd be 600 people. If we say 10%, that'd be 1,200 people. So
Okay,
Instead of saying a number of voters, I think it's better for the charter to just have a percentage of voters, and that
Okay.
way it's more objective.
so then,
But
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, so the idea that's coming, it seems to be coming out of this discussion, is that let's make it a little easier to initiate a petition in front of the council. If the council agrees, hallelujah, you got the council to pay attention. If the council doesn't agree, however, then it sounds like the same, well, except for your statements, which are fine. But another idea was that the supplemental petition and the referenda petition would be the same percentages. In other words, if you're going to protest, it's 10% on this 7-7, it's 10% on 7-8. Chris, you seem to think that even if the referendum petition was 10%, I mean, the initiative petition was 10%, for the referendum petition, you'd like to see that higher because that's overturning an already enacted law.
Yes, that's
An
correct.
idea in your mind of what percentage you'd feel comfortable with?
20%.
20%. Don't hold back.
I won't.
Okay.
So you're saying, David, then, for just point of clarification,
Yep.
that the percentage of people bringing forward the initiative would be, example, 5. Then to get it on the ballot, 10. Then when we go to a referendum on something that the council has already enacted, I'm suggesting 20.
Right, but the others have stayed with 10. So just so you know the
Right.
difference. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you.
But Chris and others, do you feel like this balancing test can be included in the report? Does it work for everybody? Is it a fair representation of a sort of an objective way to, and then this, I'm trying to do this so that if I were sitting on the council and I was involved in a hearing, I could say to a person, well, how does this work with this test? You know, how does your idea work with this test? And then you can sort of hear the person answer that question rather than have the person say, well, I was really happy about the biomass, and so I want it to be low. And somebody else say, well, I was really upset about the library, so I want it to be high. You know, then you're going to, I don't know, how can you find any place? So
I guess what I would say, David, is there isn't really anything that's an objective test. It's a test. And what it does is it asks people to assess that level, depending upon their experience. So anyway, I mean, it frames the question, and I think that's a good idea in the report to cut through, you know, some of the entire discussions over it all to say, to use those words to ask people to express their opinion.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I went in by saying this. I think the only thing that I want to start with what Otis said, which is I try to put my, you know, I've been on the inside for a long time. I was on the school committee, I was on the council, so I know what it felt like when people protested from the outside. But I've been trying to think all along of what it feels like to be on the outside for these particular provisions. I think the initiative has worked itself out. So, you know, the council, I don't think that's as controversial. I guess I just want to point out that just keep in mind that elected government can act badly. And so the question is, at what point on the continuum, or the continuum of unrest, at what point of unrest over those decisions, do you want to make it available for people to actually be able to say, stop, you cannot do this unless we go to the whole community, because you're not listening, for example. You know, just because people have gone to the end and voted doesn't mean that they're listening. So, or a deal gets made at the end and people are upset about it. So I'm not saying I'm between 5 and 10%. I feel like the arguments between those two numbers are very subjective. If you're going to win a referendum petition, you better have the votes up front, because you're going to have to win by a majority. So you can't just have 800 people vote yes, because you're not going to win. So that makes me feel like 10%, but 20% makes me pause, just to tell you the truth on that. It seems a little bit high, but that's okay. That's something to think about. John?
I just wanted to point out what you said, where you feel like government is acting badly and not listening. And to me, that's an important part of any balance test. It's one thing to have your say. It's another thing to be mad because you're not getting your way. So the bar for you to be able to go in front of the council and have your say should be low. But there's a real difference between nobody listened to me, I've been shut out of government, and I don't like the answer I got.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important part for the balance. And I'm afraid, I think that sometimes when people say government isn't listening, what they're really saying is, I didn't get the answer I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that case, that's why I tend to go more towards the 10%. And the way I think of it is, literally 9 out of 10 people in the room can disagree with you, and you still have the ability to push forward. I think that 10% is, I would not be comfortable going any less than 10. I'm not quite sure I'm at 20. I think for me, 10 is a number that works, because I think it really illustrates the difference between you're not listening to me and you're not doing what I want you to do.
It's interesting that you say that, because again, now, okay, so we've had a good discussion. Now, if you increase the percentage to 10%, let's say, because that's not what it is today. In the way the charter is written, you only have 30 days from the date that the measure is decided. And 15 of those days, no matter how good, you can have to at least give 10 days to the lawyer and 3 days to the clerk. So you're only going to have, less than 20 days left for people to gather once they've given the green light, to gather 1,200 signatures. So I guess the question is there another place where, if you want to go higher and higher, that you, so Alan and I talked about this at length, and we thought that it's a concept that you stretch the period to 45 days, which is kind of a drag, because people aren't getting the satisfaction of knowing whether there will or won't be a petition. Like with the library, people had to start spending money and they were frozen. But it gives people 30 full days to gather signatures of a large number. So I just want you to know that's a piece too. If you have 20% and you're going to get 20% signatures in 15 days, I doubt that would. I mean, it might work for the library and the biomass, because everybody saw those coming, and maybe those are the things that will work. But there might be decisions that get made that are like, oh my God, this is a bad decision. We just, nobody paid attention. It's a bad decision. We want, and we can gather 1,200 people, but but we need time. So that's the other part of it. I would say, if you're ever going to make it low, which doesn't sound the recommendation is, to 500 people, 600 people, then it should be a short period of time. Get your act together, and that's the way it goes. But if you're going to make it higher, should it still be 30 days? I mean, it's unbelievable how the state law is 21 days. You get 21 days to get 12% of the voters in the city of Boston, for example, organized that's how that works. But just keep that in mind. And I put it in the notes, but we haven't really brought it out, that there's a difference. As the numbers go up, do you give more days? We've already protected, if the lawyer takes too long, the days get increased. And if the clerk takes too long, the days get increased, just because you can't hold people up that way. But anyway, that's just another piece of it to think about. But I really appreciate everything that everybody has said. And I personally think that if there's a groundswell of disagreement, you will be able to properly petition your government, because the groundswell will take care of itself. It will happen. But doing that in 15 days with a high number of signatures just may not necessarily be totally fair. So that's just something to think about. So we left that blank. I don't think it should go any longer than 45 days, because the measure is frozen. So anyway, anything else, anybody? I think we've all, right? We've done this good. I will put in, well, I'll put in the next report, you know, between 5 and 10% with Chris suggesting 20. I mean, I'll put it in there, just like Chris had suggested the other piece for the assessors, and it was different. So I'll put in the suggestion.
I would think that the report would say that 10% would be the level that most people agreed with for either a referendum petition or an initiative supplemental petition.
Initiative
I mean, that's what I thought I heard. I don't know whether I heard that or not, but
no, you did.
with the exception of Chris.
am.
That's not a value judgment. That's just what I heard.
No eye rolling on Zoom.
That's right. You're not allowed to. That's right.
Okay.
Turn your video off first. David, if I may.
You want to say something? Sure. Please.
Yeah, I do. One of the things that now we've removed is we've removed that biennial election piece out of all of this petition language, both initiative and referendum. So part of my thinking is that obviously there's less people that turn out for a biennial, and I think the numbers more accurately reflect the registered voters in the town. And carrying that forward to when you are elected to council, you and Otis's point is extremely well taken, is that you are representing the people, you're making decisions and you're making law. So it seems to me that when you make law, there should be a higher threshold to overturn it. Just given the fact that you have spent, you know, a very long time getting to the point where the council takes a vote. So I firmly believe that at 20% to overturn, like if we use the library, and we shouldn't just say like that is never going to happen again, or there's going to be everything else is going to be like the library. There's going to be so many different things. But once a law is made, I just really feel like the community percentage has to reflect a community involvement, and I'm not sure a lower number is going to be helpful that way. So that's all I'm going to say. And yes, you can cite me and roll your eyes, and that's fine. So
no, Chris, I want you to understand that what we did is we took we said registered voters in the last biennial election because our town only votes every 2 years. So you have to go back. So let's say last year when we voted for president, do you want that to be the registered voters? I mean, or do you want it to be when we last did a town election, a citywide election?
no, I just want, what I want, David, is I want consistency.
We're trying to be consistent in our definition. It would be the number of people registered to vote the last time we had a city election. If you think it should be the last election, what happens is that in year odd, you have registered voter A because it's a city election. And in year 2, if you go through a petition, you have a statewide and national election, which might increase temporarily the number of registered voters. So you're getting an inconsistency in terms of when you decide to petition. So we just picked something that was grounded in consistency. At the last biennial election, whatever happened at that election, that's what you get to measure against. It doesn't
It's
have to be
not what happens at the election. It's the number of registered voters.
Number of registered voters.
Not what happens, not how many people vote, but only the number of registered voters, essentially every 2 years.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Alan, because the way I was interpreting things was it was a percentage of the people that turned out in the city election.
No, that's what we tried to take out because we thought it was too
Fluctuating.
capricious or yeah. So we tried to just do a very simple so that people could understand that number clearly, simply, and almost at all times.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So Chris, you're okay with the last biennial election number of total registered voters?
Total, yes. The total registered voters. Yes.
At the last time we voted in a citywide election.
So if we're going to vote soon this year, right? So we're going to look at this this voting process, and as of November whatever, then we have 11,000 voters. I like that. That's fine. That's a discrete number.
Yep.
And it will not be predicated going forward, not predicated on the fact that only 4,000 of the 11,000 turned out.
Correct.
And that's the complex percentage, so that I was more worried about. So yes, that's perfectly fine. In other words, you're using a voter count officially from the city clerk's office. Got it. That's.
Do you still support 20% of the registered voters? I mean, 20% of the registered voters would be around 2,400 people currently. 2,400 signatures.
But that is for a referendum petition.
Correct. Yeah.
I guess I have to think about that a little bit more. It certainly should not drop below 10%. And it might be, I don't want it to be punitive, but I do want to protect the process where the governmental process where representatives do their job. And as I've heard this evening, a lot of discussion where there is a difference between, I didn't get my way, therefore I'm going to file this petition. And that just seems counterproductive to the whole democratic piece of our local government. So I'd have to rethink that. I'm sorry, I couldn't give you an answer right now, but I'm going to rethink it. How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so I got the 45 days out of there. So again, the 10%, does 10% require an increase from 30 to 45 days, or should it still be 30 days? That's another, that's another judgment call. Okay, we all done with 7.7 and 7.8 for now?
Yes.
Okay. So as far as I could tell, okay, so you all got the draft. Alan gave me a couple of confusing things by individual email, which I've changed. The mayor has asked to change her she's not on the call anymore. I mean, not at the meeting anymore, but her temporary mayor situation, which I should have talked to her about. So I have 4 things that we need to still do. The temporary mayor, which I think can be done in a short conversation. The planning and construction, which the mayor, so that was kind of interesting that I got something that made it seem like everybody had agreed, but they hadn't. So the mayor went back to her, what she wants. I'm going to use that as the language unless anybody objects. The city clerk, we had a meeting. I don't know if I talked about this last time. Maybe I did. We had a meeting, and so you have a fine line. You have the language in the charter, which is actually state law, because there are functions of the city clerk that are defined by state law, and it says that the legislative body picks the clerk. So that's I think that's the way it's going to be. But the other side is the idea of the mayor. The mayor makes the contract. The mayor creates the salary. I don't think that's a problem, even if it's not stated. I mean, I guess I could leave, I don't know what to do with that, what suggestion to make. Nobody's made a suggestion to me. I'm just speaking out of turn. And, or what happens if the president of the council and the mayor both want the city clerk's attention at the same time? Which I think is more of the day-to-day stuff, but yes, go ahead, Chris.
Do you want to discuss now, or are you saying these will be agenda items for next meeting?
No, I'm saying I wanted to ask you if we should talk these out now, and then I want to hear from everybody about what their impressions are of my draft 3. It feels for me like we're pretty close, right? I didn't get a lot of feedback. I would have thought that there were concerns. I would have gotten some feedback. So yeah, we have temporary mayor, city clerk, planning and construction, and then the assessor language that, you know, we talked about tonight, which has to be kind of thrown in, let's say, draft 4. Okay, so that would be, so I would take it upon myself what I understood. I think it's just throwing in, we need an answer about indefinite, and then I would throw in language about the distinction between the appointed and the elected assessors, what they're, that one's a day-to-day and the other is not. However artfully I could do that, you could all help me edit, that would be great, but that's the concept. And then Chris is the distinction between 2 elected, 1 appointed, and 3 appointed, and that's the assessor section. Beyond what and I'll put the legal opinion in just so that the council can see what the lawyer said, and if there's a follow-up legal opinion, I'll throw it in there as well. So I don't know what to do with the city clerk. I don't know how exactly, I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay, having faced this question before, I guess I would like to ask Clerk Scott, what in her day-to-day routine does she produce for the mayor? That would be very critical to know what duties and responsibilities she has towards the mayor. Because having worked in the clerk's office and having also been mayor, it is very clear that the council appoints the clerk, and therefore anything to do with legislative side of government is in the responsibility of the clerk's office. But the executive side of government, I would just like to know what is, you know, what does she do for the mayor, the executive side of government? The question you asked was, if both sides of government had a need, which one would she choose? And so I'm thinking in terms of the language which says the council appoints her. So to me, the answer would be the council. Maybe the understanding what administrative duties she does for the executive side of government would be helpful in trying to determine how this language should be written. And perhaps the only thing right now that is really involved in all of this is the issue of a contract and a pay schedule and the HR pieces. So long ago, there was, when we first started this form of government, there was a huge discussion on who the clerk works for and who comes first, and that was obviously the council. But now I'm not sure what the practice has been all along, and I do want to see the clerk be more, perhaps the word is autonomous, and exist as a special entity. Don't know how you do that in HR law, but you can't serve 2 bosses, but maybe it's simple as the council president and the mayor, meet and set, the parameters for her employment and draft a memorandum of understanding or something like that. But I do think the language needs more clarification. Thank you.
Thanks. Otis.
Yeah, I probably mentioned this before when we first talked about it, but my main confusion around who the clerk reports to has had to do with job performance review and human resources, like Chris mentioned. because there have, in the time that I've been on the council, been there's been counselors who wanted some type of performance review or who had some comments that they wanted included in the personnel file. And at the time, council was actually kind of shut out from, the counselor that I'm talking about was basically said, no, we're not going to acknowledge this. This is not for you to, and it seems clear that if council appoints and has the authority to remove, that council should have something to do with performance review. But I have no idea how to codify that. But it does continue to be kind of a sticking point.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I didn't even think about that. I mean, my legal opinion would be that you had every right to that because you appoint and you relieve. So I don't think the mayor's office would have won that battle. But on the other hand, if you didn't like how much money the mayor, well, I guess if you didn't like how much money the mayor appropriated for the clerk's salary, you could always get into the budget and defeat it that way. So that's another tool. I don't know. Part of me, I met with them, and what Kathy said was that Tammy's is your clerk. So the assistant clerk, actually, you have her at your disposal. So she will not do anything for the mayor. So that's how they practically divided it. And then Kathy, I think, is the clerk generally, and she'll answer Tammy's questions, and then she'll work for the mayor. So she's the head of the pyramid. Tammy's underneath her, but council gets all of her attention. So, I guess I don't know. Let me ask you this, instead of continuing to talk about it, is it something that should be left, or is it something that we should form an opinion about before we do our draft? I mean, we're at it, but I don't know what then I'm going to I'll go back into I did get some other charters from Kathy, which gave me a headache. So I can go, I'll tell you what, I'll dig into it a little more, being the nice man.
Thanks, David. And if you find nothing, I'm also okay with leaving it how you are. I think you're correct that council probably could have pushed on that issue and gotten some type of performance review.
Yeah, but council still can, when charter goes over to council, we could still address it on council floor. So
you can,
True.
And what I have in the draft report is just a notation that there's an empty area. There's an area that needs to be further discussed.
Right.
So I do note that, but all right. Well, I think we'll have one more meeting where maybe we'll iron out. Okay. So the temporary mayor. I wish the mayor was here because I wanted to comment on her suggestions. Yes, Chris.
Okay, the language that pertains to, how do you count business days versus calendar days and a mayoral absence? I think the mayor proposed something that's reasonable and workable. So I thought that language was fine. The piece of that language that I did not agree with, respectfully, was the fact that she wanted to put chief of staff as a designated person. Well, quite honestly, in the charter, chief of staff doesn't exist. And I think we have to be careful of the titles that we are given, because are we actually adding people or whatever? The mayor gets a budget. She can do whatever she wants. She can call whatever she wants. And, as far as titles are concerned, my own personal experience was whenever I had to take it to use that language, it was always, not always, but it was mostly the chief financial officer that was designated to be temporary mayor. Sometimes it was the HR director, and sometimes it was the police or the fire chief, or even DPW. It all depended on who was available and the length of time. So I'm arguing for less description of who will step into place, but it has to be a senior level employee, and it would be at the mayor's discretion who to appoint. Couldn't be a union employee, for instance, because there would be the conflict of the contract. So anybody that was covered by a union would not be eligible, but any of the senior staff that have independent contracts, the mayor gets to choose and designate. So I think keep it open and keep it looser, because it's better and it allows you a little bit more flexibility in assessing the situation and who would be the best person to take care of the city while I'm gone for X number of days. So I would argue
So,
against the definitive language being in there.
so leave
Okay.
it as it is, essentially, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah, sorry, that's
Okay.
I'm a windbag, aren't I? My goodness. Yes.
I'm going to
Well-
turn off my camera so I can roll my eyes.
Okay, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
I think we're gonna, when we adjourn, everybody will practice that.
Okay, rolling our eyes.
Okay, so if you look at these two sections, it divides into three separate timeframes. Between 0 and now it says 10 days. I thought the mayor wanted 15 days, but there was a question about that being too long. But then I thought by reducing that to 15 business days, it gave the mayor a chance to take 3 weeks off. Which, I mean, the council might not like that, and you could say no to it, but I felt like the group as a whole didn't want it longer than 15 business days, which could be 3 weeks in a row. Okay, because Erin, you had brought that up. You're nodding. So okay. So and the fact that it says not of less than, that's because of less than 15 days is the first category. So if the mayor's going to be gone for between 0 and 15 days, then he or she can appoint now again, Chris, I think it's already in there, a qualified city officer or employee.
Yeah.
And so for 15 days, that person's in charge. It could be Mayor Rita Gardner. It sounds like she will pick her chief of staff every single time, and that's fine. But I said to her last time, and I respectfully still agree with her, it should not be specific. It handcuffs, it's a handcuffing. The second period of time is between 15 days and 60 days. And the mayor is saying, oh, well, let's just let that designated person continue to be mayor from day 16 to day 60. And I said that I didn't like that because I wanted to then become an elected official who would then be the president of the council or vice president of the council. I don't know if we agreed on that, so we can talk through that. And then but during that 60 days, from 0 to 60, the acting mayor cannot make certain types of decisions.
Right.
So even if it's the president of the council, that person cannot make certain. And then after that, it's clear that that the person's acting mayor for a period of time. Alan.
When you're saying up to 60 days, are you talking 60 business days or 60 calendar days?
No, it's 60 calendar days.
Okay, so 15 business days and then up to 60 calendar days.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, we can make that clearer. We can say calendar.
Yeah.
But I think because it doesn't say business, it means calendar.
Okay.
So the mayor wants to keep that person in, and I wrote in, which I thought we agreed to, and I don't want to be disagreeable with the mayor when she's not here, but I wrote in, and the mayor's qualified person shall assist, not may assist, shall assist the acting mayor in their duties of the office. So if Mayor Rita Gardner knows she's going to be gone for 60 calendar days and she designates chief of staff, that person has to assist the president of the council. It's not a may. So I thought that was good. Do other people think that that's an okay suggestion? I mean, again, the mayor and the council can take this up differently. But are we okay with leaving it the way it is? And I don't mean, again, I don't mean to disagree with the mayor, and she's not here to defend herself, but okay.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, David.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
wondered
agree.
why she did it again. Maybe she had forgotten. Okay, so planning and construction, clerk David's gonna do, assessor David's gonna do. We did the temporary mayor thing. You're all good with the drafts. Help me here. So I'm gonna create a draft 4, which will be similar to draft 3. I'm gonna get all the exhibits together and send them out so that you can see the whole thing, whole enchilada.
Mhm.
I will write a summary and it'll be relatively short, but that's the piece where all of you get a chance to, as Chris has daydreamed, to write dissenting opinions if you wish, or concurring opinions if you wish, depending on how you want to do it. Because I'm going to write like, this is what I think we all agreed to do, and then other people could say, well, I wasn't, I have something else to say, which I want everybody to say something if they feel okay, and it's okay for people to say, no, David said it, I'll sign my name to that piece of it. So,
Yeah.
and you can also sign your name to what I say and also add a concurring. So it's just so that the city council knows how they could get a sense of who the people are behind the decisions. You know what I mean? Like Chris felt this way, David felt this way, Aaron felt this way. You know, it's easier for. Okay. So
Frozen.
David, you're frozen.
okay, am I frozen?
Yeah,
Nope,
No,
now you're
no,
back.
no.
go back.
Okay, I said John Lunt is now in charge of writing all the drafts of.
No,
all
that's
the-
not what you said.
I thought I did.
No,
That's not what I said. Okay, I
no.
said
We'll
we're
discuss what you said later.
we're almost there, right? So the next meeting could be
Yeah.
like holding hands and doing all that stuff, and then I promised in one of the interviews, I promised we'd have it to the council by the end of April. So that's my goal.
Mhm.
All right, so everybody's good, right? Please send me individually comments if you think something is necessary. All right, so the next meeting, how about the April 12th?
April
All right.
12th. Okay.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks from today. It's a Monday. You know, the weather still will be a little stinky, so you don't have to worry about the 5:30 and all that.
Sounds good to me.
Okay,
Yeah,
Can we make it 6?
Sure.
sure.
6.
Yeah, I like that better.
Okay.
What's the date? April. What was that?
12th.
Well,
All right. Anything else anybody has to say?
Just
On the
to let you know, David, in section 7, 8, we neglected one final line in the appendix, so I would need to submit to you an edited version of that, but it would just be.
7-8. In
I
7-8.
believe so, yeah. So, yeah, either 7-7 or 7-8. One of them we forgot to add the final line concerning what makes an eligible election. So anyway, it's a small change, but I just wanted to let you know
No,
that.
it's important.
I will
Good.
work on it and send it to you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand.
And your eyes.
Aye.
And roll your eyes at Chris.
Roll your
Okay.
eye.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.